The moment Victoria Halle dropped to one knee in front of a stunned, single father, the entire ballroom forgot how to breathe. Crystal glasses froze halfway to lips while conversations died mid-sentence and camera flashes crackled like silent lightning. 2 hours earlier, Daniel Reyes stood outside the Grand Monarch Hotel, unaware his life was about to split into a before and after. He stared at the towering glass doors, wondering if someone would stop him the second he stepped forward. Luxury cars rolled up one after another, releasing guests dressed in wealth and confidence. Daniel adjusted the old tie that once belonged to his late wife, feeling its memories tighten around his throat. Sophia tugged his sleeve and asked if he was nervous, her eyes sparkling with excitement. He admitted he was terrified, and she laughed like fear was just another silly game. She told him rich people slept on fancy beds while he helped people sleep on warm ones, making him smile. Together they walked through the doors into a world that felt far bigger than either of them. Golden chandeliers stretched across the ceiling, pouring warm light onto polished marble floors. A live orchestra filled the room with soft music that echoed through every corner. Daniel felt painfully out of place among suits sharper than knives and gowns brighter than stars. Sophia whispered that the ballroom looked like a prince's castle straight out of her storybooks. A volunteer guided them to a small table near the back, far from the center of power. Sophia immediately opened a box of crayons and began drawing tiny dancers under chandeliers. Daniel watched her quietly, feeling pride mixed with the familiar ache of raising her alone. Memories of his late wife flickered through his mind like shadows in warm light. He reminded himself the night was supposed to be simple: an award, a thank you, and a quick exit. The grand doors opened again, and a ripple of whispers moved through the room. Victoria Halle entered with calm authority, her black gown flowing like liquid night. Guests straightened their posture as if a storm had just walked into the ballroom. Cameras flashed non-stop, chasing every movement she made. Her sharp gaze swept across the crowd like a spotlight searching for something real. It paused on Sophia, hunched over her drawing with complete innocence. For a brief second, Victoria's expression softened into something almost vulnerable. Daniel remained unaware, struggling instead to figure out which fork belonged to him. The ceremony began with polished speeches about business success and innovation. Investors whispered deals to each other while polite applause rose and fell like waves. Daniel listened quietly, feeling like a stranger in a language built from money. Suddenly, his name appeared on the massive screen behind the stage. A montage showed his shelter, volunteers serving meals, and children laughing together. His recorded voice echoed through the room, promising that nobody deserved to feel invisible. With trembling hands, he walked toward the stage beneath blinding lights. He began honestly, admitting he wasn't used to speaking in rooms like this. Warm laughter rippled through the audience, easing some of his fear. He spoke about losing his wife and the grief that nearly swallowed him whole. He shared how the shelter was built from heartbreak and stubborn hope. He described how Sophia taught him that broken hearts could still create beautiful things. When he finished, the applause was louder than anything he had imagined. He stepped away from the microphone, ready to disappear back into the crowd. Victoria Halle walked toward the stage, unscheduled and unexpected. The orchestra fell silent again as whispers filled the air like static. Guests exchanged confused glances, knowing she hadn't been on the program. Daniel paused mid-step, unsure whether to leave or stay. Victoria accepted the microphone with a flicker of uncertainty no one had seen before. She admitted she had planned to talk about business, but something more important had happened. Her eyes settled on Daniel, locking onto him with surprising softness. Cameras zoomed in, hungry for every second of the unfolding moment. She confessed that success had given her everything except real connection. The audience shifted uneasily, unsure where her speech was heading. She took a deep breath that echoed louder than the orchestra ever could. "I don't have a husband," she said, her voice carrying across the room. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a sudden shockwave. She turned fully toward Daniel and spoke his name with quiet courage. Silence filled the ballroom, heavy and almost unreal. Sophia's tiny voice cut through the tension, shouting for her dad to say yes. Laughter broke the stillness, though Daniel's heart pounded harder than ever. He leaned closer and whispered to Victoria, asking if she was truly serious. She answered with a steady yes that left no room for doubt. Hundreds of eyes waited for his decision as flashes of light surrounded him. Daniel reached for the microphone, hands trembling slightly. He joked that he never expected his award to come with a date invitation. Nervous laughter rippled through the audience once more. He glanced toward Sophia, whose hopeful grin shone brighter than the chandeliers. He agreed to one date, but only if his daughter received the biggest dessert in the place. The tension shattered as applause erupted across the ballroom. Cheers echoed while disbelief and excitement collided in equal measure. Victoria smiled with visible relief, as if she had just leapt off a cliff and learned she could fly. Daniel realized that what started as a simple award night had already changed the course of his life forever. The applause from the ballroom still echoed in Daniel's ears as he and Victoria stepped out into the quiet night. The massive glass doors of the Grand Monarch Hotel closed behind them with a soft hush, sealing away the chaos of cameras, gossip, and stunned billionaires. Outside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of rain. The city lights stretched endlessly into the distance like a glittering ocean. Daniel exhaled slowly, trying to steady his racing heart. Well, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. That was not how I expected tonight to go. Victoria gave a small, nervous laugh, a sound that surprised even her. I imagine not. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on them both. Inside, reporters were already scrambling to craft headlines. Investors were whispering in alarm. Social media was exploding, and yet, outside, the world felt strangely quiet. Sophia burst through the doors behind them, holding a giant chocolate cake slice nearly the size of her head. Dad, they really gave me the biggest dessert. Daniel couldn't help but smile. Of course they did. That was part of the deal. Victoria knelt slightly so she was eye level with Sophia. Do you approve of our very unexpected evening? She asked gently. Sophia grinned. You seem nice, also brave. Dad says only brave people ask scary questions. Victoria's expression softened in a way Daniel had never seen on any news broadcast. Thank you, she said quietly, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb, the driver stepping out and opening the door. Victoria hesitated before speaking again. I promised you one date, she said. But honestly, I'd rather go somewhere normal. Somewhere real? Daniel raised an eyebrow. You mean, not a 5-star rooftop with gold napkins? She smiled faintly. Exactly. He thought for a moment, then shrugged. There's a small diner about 10 minutes from here. Nothing fancy, but the pancakes could fix most world problems. Victoria looked almost relieved. Perfect. The diner was quiet when they arrived, just a few late-night customers scattered across red vinyl booths. A neon sign buzzed softly in the window. The smell of coffee and fresh fries wrapped around them like a warm blanket. The waitress blinked twice when she recognized Victoria, but wisely said nothing beyond a friendly greeting. Daniel slid into a booth across from her while Sophia squeezed in beside him, still licking chocolate frosting from her fingers. For the first few minutes, they talked about simple things, favorite foods, Sophia's school, and the chaos of raising kids alone. The tension slowly melted away, but eventually, Daniel leaned forward, folding his hands on the table. Okay, he said gently. I need to ask the obvious question. Why me? Victoria stared into her coffee, tracing the rim of the mug with her finger. Her usual confidence seemed to disappear, replaced by something fragile. Do you remember a rainy night 5 years ago? She asked quietly. Highway exit near Maple Street? Daniel frowned. Maybe. I've helped a lot of people. My car broke down, she continued. It was pouring rain. I was standing there in heels, soaked and furious. Dozens of cars drove past, but you stopped. Memories flickered through Daniel's mind, headlights cutting through rain. A frustrated woman pacing beside a luxury car, Sophia asleep in the back seat. You had your daughter with you, Victoria said softly. She offered me a blanket. From the back seat. You bought me coffee while we waited for the tow truck. Daniel blinked. That was you? She nodded. You didn't recognize me? You didn't care about my status? You just talked to me like I was a normal person. You told me about your wife, about building something meaningful from loss. Her voice trembled slightly. That night, she continued, was the last time anyone treated me without an agenda. Daniel felt a tightness in his chest. Why didn't you say anything earlier? He asked. I tried to forget, she admitted. Life moved fast, my company exploded, my schedule became insane. But every year I donated anonymously to your shelter. I kept watching from a distance. Daniel stared at her, stunned. You've been helping us? She nodded. Not because I wanted recognition, because I believed in what you were doing. Sophia looked between them with wide eyes. So you were friends before you knew you were friends? She asked. Victoria laughed softly. Something like that. Hours passed as they talked. Victoria shared stories about growing up with nothing, working 2 jobs in college, being underestimated in male-dominated boardrooms, and building her empire from relentless determination. Daniel shared stories about grief, about learning to cook dinners that didn't burn, about attending school plays alone, about nights when exhaustion felt heavier than sadness. The more they spoke, the more they realized how similar their struggles were beneath the surface of their very different lives. Outside, paparazzi began to gather. Camera flashes lit up the diner windows like distant lightning. Victoria glanced toward the door uneasily. This is going to be everywhere tomorrow. Daniel nodded. I know, she hesitated. If this causes trouble for you, I understand if you want to step away. He studied her face, the vulnerability she tried so hard to hide from the world. Let's get through tonight first, he said gently. The next morning, the headlines exploded. CEO begs single dad for date, romance or publicity stunt? Power woman loses professional edge? Daniel's phone buzzed nonstop. Messages poured in, some supportive, some cruel. Strangers accused him of chasing money. Others mocked his modest life. A shelter, volunteers whispered nervously about the attention. Donors called to ask questions. Daniel sat at his desk, staring at the screen, feeling overwhelmed. Meanwhile, Victoria faced her own storm. Her board of directors called an emergency meeting. This is reckless. One executive snapped. You're jeopardizing the company's reputation. Investors are nervous, another added. They think you're distracted. Victoria listened quietly, then spoke with calm certainty. For the first time in years, she said, I'm doing something honest instead of strategic. The room fell silent. This man, she continued, represents the values we claim to support: community, compassion, humanity. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe we need to reevaluate what success actually means. Some executives were furious. Others were quietly impressed. Days passed. Daniel considered pulling away. The pressure felt suffocating. He worried about Sophia, about the shelter, about being swallowed by a world that didn't belong to him. One evening, Sophia found him sitting alone on the couch, staring at his phone. Are you going to stop seeing her? She asked softly. I don't know, he admitted. She climbed onto his lap. When she's around, you laugh more? And she laughs too. I think she needs us a little. Her words lingered in his mind. That same night, Victoria visited the shelter without cameras, without announcements. She wore simple jeans and helped serve dinner. She listened to stories from families who had lost everything. Daniel watched her from across the room, seeing not a CEO but a woman trying to reconnect with something real. When their eyes met, there was no spotlight, just quiet understanding. Later, outside the shelter, Daniel spoke first. This world you live in. It's loud, he said. I don't know if I fit there. Victoria shook her head gently. And the world you live in is real. That's why I need it. They stood in silence for a moment. So, she asked softly, do you regret saying yes? He looked at her, remembering the rain-soaked night years ago. The laughter in the diner, the way Sophia had smiled when they were together. No, he said honestly. I'm just scared of what comes next. She smiled faintly. Me too. For the first time since that shocking moment on stage, the pressure faded, slightly replaced by something fragile, but genuine. Not a publicity stunt, not a business strategy, just two people trying to figure out whether a single unexpected date could become something real. despite a world that refused to stop watching. The first night after the headlines exploded, Daniel barely slept. His phone buzzed nonstop on the nightstand, lighting up the dark room every few minutes like silent lightning, messages from strangers, interview requests. Old acquaintances suddenly eager to reconnect. Even a few distant relatives asking if he was dating the billionaire lady for real. He turned the phone face down. Across the room, Sophia slept peacefully, hugging her stuffed bear. The quiet rhythm of her breathing grounded him, reminding him that despite the chaos outside, his most important world still fit inside their small apartment. But everything felt different now. When morning came, the neighborhood felt like it had transformed overnight. People stared longer than usual. A few neighbors offered congratulations, others whispered behind closed doors. Someone had taped a printed tabloid headline to the shelter's front window as a joke or maybe a warning. Daniel pulled it down. Before Sophia could see inside, volunteers gathered around the coffee machine, pretending not to discuss the situation while clearly discussing nothing else. "Are you okay?" Maria, one of the longest-serving volunteers, asked gently. "I think so," Daniel said. Though he wasn't sure it was true, donations began arriving unexpectedly, some from supporters inspired by the publicity, others from people hoping to attach their names to the trending story. But along with generosity came criticism. Online comments accused him of using charity work to climb social ladders. Daniel focused on work repairing broken beds, organizing food deliveries, helping a young mother find temporary housing. The routine grounded him, but the pressure simmered. Beneath every moment, meanwhile, across the city, Victoria faced her own storm. Her office, usually a fortress of calm efficiency, buzzed with tension. Screens displayed financial forecasts and trending hashtags. Advisors debated damage control strategies. Public relations teams suggested staged appearances and carefully crafted statements. Victoria listened quietly before speaking. "No staged romance," she said firmly. "No fake narratives. I won't turn Daniel into a marketing tool." Her communications director sighed. "You're fighting the internet, Victoria. Silence looks suspicious." "Then let them be suspicious," she replied calmly. "I'm done living my life like a press release." Still, the board's pressure intensified. Investors worried that her personal life might destabilize the company. Competitors used the media frenzy to question her professionalism. Yet despite the chaos, Victoria found herself thinking about the shelter, the laughter of children, the smell of warm soup, the way Daniel listened when people spoke instead of waiting for his turn to talk, and she missed it. A few days later, she showed up again, this time carrying boxes of donated supplies. Daniel looked surprised when he saw her, pushing open the shelter's door in jeans and a simple sweater. "No cameras?" he asked cautiously. She shook her head. "Just me." The children recognized her immediately from the news and swarmed her with curious questions. Instead of retreating, she knelt on the floor and listened, laughing when one little boy asked if CEOs were allowed to eat pizza. Daniel watched from across the room, noticing how natural she seemed outside boardrooms and headlines. Later, they sat together on the shelter's rooftop as the sun set behind the city skyline. "Your world is intense," he said quietly. "So is yours," she replied, "just in a different way." He hesitated. The attention. It's starting to affect Sophia. Kids at school are asking questions. Some parents think I'm chasing money. Victoria's expression softened with concern. "I never wanted to complicate your life." "I know," he said. "But we need to be honest about how heavy this is." She nodded slowly. "Then let's take it one step at a time. No pressure, no expectations." For the first time since the gala, Daniel felt a small sense of relief. That weekend, they attempted something almost impossible, an ordinary day together. They went to a small park far from downtown, hoping to avoid paparazzi. Sophia insisted on bringing a kite, and Daniel struggled to keep it airborne while Victoria laughed so hard she nearly fell onto the grass. For a few precious hours, they forgot about headlines. Victoria shared stories about her childhood growing up in a cramped apartment, dreaming of stability and promising herself she would never feel powerless again. Daniel shared memories of his late wife, her kindness, her stubborn optimism, and the way she had believed in building community long before it became trendy. Sophia ran between them, her laughter filling the air like music, but peace didn't. Last, a photographer hiding near the park entrance snapped photos. By evening, new headlines surfaced. CEO plays family with single dad. Is this a fairy tale or a PR strategy? The online criticism grew harsher. Anonymous accounts mocked Daniel's modest lifestyle. Some questioned Victoria's judgment, claiming she had lost her edge. That night, Daniel considered ending things not because he doubted Victoria's sincerity, but because he feared the toll on Sophia. He sat at the kitchen table long after she went to bed, staring at his phone. Before he could make a decision, a message arrived from Victoria. Are you okay? He hesitated before replying honestly. I'm overwhelmed. Her response came instantly. Me too. Want to talk? They spoke on the phone for hours. No reporters, no expectations, just two people admitting they were scared. I'm used to fighting battles alone, she confessed quietly. But this feels different. I'm used to protecting Sophia from everything, he admitted. I don't know how to protect her from the world watching us. There was a long silence. We don't have to decide anything tonight, she said finally. Let's just keep showing up for each other and see where it goes. The following week brought unexpected challenges. At a major shareholder meeting, an investor publicly questioned Victoria's focus. Your personal decisions are affecting public perception, he argued. She responded calmly. My performance metrics haven't changed. The company is stronger than ever. If my choosing to connect with real people threatens our values, perhaps we should reconsider what those values truly are. The room erupted into debate, but her confidence didn't waver. Meanwhile, Daniel faced his own confrontation when a wealthy donor offered a massive contribution on the condition that he participate in a televised interview discussing his relationship with Victoria. Daniel declined. The shelter's mission mattered more than publicity. That evening, Victoria visited again, bringing takeout dinner. They sat on the floor with Sophia, sharing stories and laughter. The simple moments felt more valuable than any glamorous event. You know, Daniel said thoughtfully, this started as one date, but it's becoming something bigger. Victoria looked at him carefully. Does that scare you? Yes, he admitted, but not as much as losing what we're building. She smiled softly. Then maybe we keep building slowly. One night, weeks after the gala, they returned to the same diner where their first date had begun. The waitress greeted them like old friends. Sophia ordered fries and Daniel ordered pancakes. Victoria removed her heels and relaxed into the booth. Like she belonged there. Outside, a few reporters lingered, but inside the diner, the world felt smaller. I used to think success meant control, Victoria admitted quietly. But with you, I'm learning that vulnerability is stronger than perfection. Daniel looked at her thoughtfully. And I used to think love was something that only existed in my past. But maybe it can exist in new forms too. Sophia looked up from her milkshake. Does that mean you like each other a lot? She asked bluntly. They both laughed. Yeah, Daniel said. I think it does. The following morning, a surprising shift began. Articles appeared highlighting Victoria's genuine involvement in community work rather than focusing solely on romance. Former employees shared stories of her quiet generosity. Shelter residents spoke publicly about Daniel's unwavering compassion. Public opinion slowly softened. Not everyone approved, but more people began to see the authenticity behind the headlines. One evening, as they walked together outside the shelter, Daniel turned to Victoria. You know, he said, this entire situation started with you asking for one date. She smiled. And I was terrified you'd say no. He looked at her, remembering the courage it must have taken to risk her reputation in front of a room full of powerful people. That night changed everything, he said quietly. Not just for us, but for how we see ourselves. She nodded. I'm still figuring out who I am outside my title. And I'm still figuring out how to live a life that's bigger than my grief, he admitted. They stood under the soft glow of streetlights, the noise of the city fading into the background. For the first time, neither of them felt like characters In a public spectacle, they felt like partners navigating uncertainty together. And though the world continued to watch, criticize, and speculate, something deeper had begun to take root, a connection strong enough to withstand the noise, a connection that neither of them had planned, but neither wanted to lose. The city had been watching them for weeks. Every photo, every quiet moment, every visit to the shelter turned into speculation. Some people rooted for them. Others waited eagerly for the story to collapse like a fragile house of cards. But for Daniel and Victoria, the noise of the world had slowly begun to fade into background. Static. What mattered were the small moments. Morning coffee shared on the shelter steps. Sophia's laughter echoing through hallways. The quiet understanding that grew between two people who had never planned to meet again, let alone fall into something real. Still, the pressure never fully disappeared. One Monday morning, Victoria stood in her office, staring at a news report playing silently on the wall-mounted screen. Analysts debated her leadership. Commentators questioned her priorities. A business magazine ran a cover story titled, "Love or Liability?" Her assistant knocked gently on the door. "The board has scheduled another review meeting," she said carefully. "They're worried about investor confidence," Victoria nodded slowly. "Of course they are." She turned off the screen and picked up her phone. Without overthinking, she sent Daniel a message. "Can I visit the shelter today? I need something real." His reply came a few minutes later. Always. The shelter was busy when she arrived. Families eating lunch, volunteers organizing donations, children playing games in the corner. No one cared about stock prices or corporate reputation. Victoria slipped into an apron and started helping prepare meals. Daniel watched her from across the kitchen, noticing how natural she looked moving between tables, listening to people's stories. Later they stepped outside into the cool afternoon air. "You look tired," he said gently. "I am," she admitted. "It feels like every decision I make is being judged." He leaned against the railing beside her. "You took a risk asking me out that night. You knew it would be messy." She smiled faintly. "I thought I understood messy. Turns out I didn't." He hesitated before speaking again. "Do you regret it?" She met his eyes without hesitation. "Not for a second." The honesty in her voice eased something inside him. That evening, Sophia ran toward them carrying a drawing. It showed three stick figures holding hands under giant chandeliers. "This is us," she explained proudly. "From the night you met." Victoria's eyes softened. "Can I keep this?" she asked. Sophia nodded enthusiastically. Daniel watched the exchange, realizing how deeply Victoria had become part of their lives, not as a celebrity or a billionaire, but as someone who genuinely cared. Days later, Victoria received an invitation to speak at a prestigious leadership summit, a televised event, attended by global executives and media outlets. Her team encouraged her to address the rumors directly. "Show them you're still strong," one advisor suggested. "Show them your human side." Another argued. Victoria surprised everyone by inviting Daniel and Sophia to attend as guests. When Daniel heard about the event, his first reaction was hesitation. "That's your world," he said quietly. "Not mine," she shook her head. "It's only my world because I've never let anyone else into it. I want you there not as a symbol, but as someone who matters to me." After a long pause, he agreed. The night of the summit arrived. Bright lights illuminated a massive stage. Cameras hovered like mechanical birds above the audience. Industry leaders filled the seats, whispering predictions about what Victoria would say. Daniel sat in the front row beside Sophia, feeling a familiar nervousness as the event began. When Victoria's name was announced, the room erupted into applause. Mixed with curiosity, she walked onto the stage with calm confidence, but her speech was unlike anything she had ever delivered before. "For years," she began, "I believed success meant control. I believed strength meant never showing vulnerability." The audience listened intently. "Then one night," she continued, "I saw a man speak about kindness in a room full of ambition, and I realized something was missing from my life, not money, not power, but genuine connection." Cameras shifted toward Daniel in the audience. She didn't avoid the attention. Yes, she said openly. I asked him for a date in front of hundreds of people. And yes, the world judged that decision. Some called it unprofessional. Others called it reckless. She paused, letting the tension build. But I call it honest. The room grew silent. Leadership isn't just about making profitable choices, she continued. It's about making human choices. And if building real relationships makes me appear vulnerable, then I'm proud to be vulnerable. The audience erupted into applause, some hesitant, some enthusiastic. She concluded by announcing a new initiative, a corporate partnership program to support community shelters nationwide. Inspired by the work Daniel had been doing for years, the applause turned into a standing ovation. Daniel felt tears sting his eyes as Sophia squeezed his hand tightly. After the event, reporters surrounded them. Is your relationship real? One journalist shouted. Daniel looked at Victoria before answering. It started with one unexpected question, he said calmly. But what we've built since then is real because it's rooted in respect and shared values, Victoria added softly, and because we chose to keep showing up for each other even when it was uncomfortable. For the first time, the media coverage shifted from skepticism to genuine curiosity. In the weeks that followed, public opinion began to change. Stories highlighted the impact of Victoria's new community initiatives. Former critics acknowledged her courage in prioritizing authenticity. The shelter received increased support not because of celebrity attention, but because people finally saw the importance of its mission. One afternoon, Daniel stood on the shelter's rooftop watching volunteers unload new supplies funded by the partnership program. Victoria joined him, leaning against the railing. You've changed my world, she said quietly. He shook his head. We changed each other's worlds. She smiled. Do you remember that first night? She asked. How terrified I was when I asked you out. He laughed softly. I thought it was a prank. And now? She asked. He looked at her seriously. Now I can't imagine my life without you in it. Months later, another charity gala took place, this time celebrating the success of the new nationwide shelter initiative. Unlike the first event, Daniel walked into the ballroom with confidence. Sophia held Victoria's hand as they moved through the crowd together. When they were invited onto the stage, the audience applauded warmly, not because of scandal or surprise, but because of respect. Daniel spoke first. I used to think my world was small, he said, but love and compassion have a way of expanding everything. Victoria took the microphone next. And I used to believe power meant standing alone, she said. But real strength comes from standing with people who challenge you to grow. She turned toward Daniel. So, she said with a playful smile, are we still calling it just one date? The audience laughed. Daniel shook his head. Not anymore. He reached for her hand. Sophia ran onto the stage and hugged them both, her laughter echoing through the room. And in that moment, beneath the same chandeliers that had once witnessed a shocking request, the story came full circle, not as a publicity stunt, not as a fairy tale built on wealth or status, but as a reminder that sometimes the bravest decisions are the most human ones. Asking for connection, choosing vulnerability, and believing that love can grow in the most unexpected places. As the applause filled the ballroom, Daniel realized something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. And Victoria, once known only as an untouchable CEO, stood beside him, not as a headline but as a partner, a friend, and someone who had found a home in the unlikeliest of places. And it had all started with one simple question. Would you go out with me tonight?